and welcome to this episode of the Selling Through Partnering Skills podcast, where I am delighted to be joined by David Meeman Scott. David, welcome.
Fred, awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
So let's get straight into this, because I've got a very specific line of questioning I want to take with you. But first, if you could just give us a little bit of background to yourself and how you've got to write 12 books. I mean, I'm working on my second now, but 12, come on.
because I was fired, Fred. That's the short answer. I was sacked. I worked for about 15 years in the financial information business for companies like Dow Jones and Thomson Reuters. I worked in Asia for most of that time, about 10 years in Tokyo and Hong Kong. And so I was both a sales and marketing person for financial information companies. My bosses found that my ideas were a little bit too radical, so they sacked me. And that was great. That was back in 2002, 19 years ago. And so ever since then, I've been writing about, teaching, speaking around, and advising on the ideas of a better way to do sales and marketing, especially B2B sales and marketing. So that's what I've been focusing my time and attention on. And I know that these ideas that I talk about work because I also serve on advisory boards of companies, B2B companies typically. And I only take equity, I don't take cash. And I'm doing extremely well with my portfolio of about 15 different advisory clients that I've had over the years. Most significantly, I've been on the HubSpot advisory board since the very beginning, 2007. And when I joined them, they had zero revenue, zero customers. The last earnings announcement that they did a couple of months ago, just around 100,000 customers, $850 million in annual revenue, and a market cap of $25 billion. So that's not bad for a B2B company that I advise. And so these ideas work.
That's all right. And there's quite a cool story, isn't there, about the relationship and how that started with HubSpot?
Yeah, and it's really interesting, this story, in that so many B2B salespeople, I think, are unwilling to open up a little bit about their personal lives. And so the story, which actually opens the book I wrote called Fanocracy, I wrote that with my daughter, Reiko. And our book, Fanocracy, is how to turn customers into fans. And one of the most surprising aspects of this idea of fandom turned out to be the importance of passion. When you have passion for something, that passion is infectious. And often the passion can be something completely outside of work. It can be the sport that you love to play, or the sports team that you love to root for. Or in my case, I'm a massive fan of live music. I've been to 804 live shows in my life. 75 Grateful Dead concerts. And behind me right here, you can see my live music Hall of Fame
That's cool.
in my home office. And so for other people, it might be bird watching or camping or surfing or all kinds of different things that people are a fan of. And when you celebrate what it is you're a fan of and you share that with the world, it makes you a more interesting person. It makes people more likely to want to engage with you on a business level, because you're more than just a business machine who's only going to talk business. So the story of how I met HubSpot is the entire management team, 3 people. So company only had 8 people at the time, but 3 people all read my book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, when it first came out back in 2007. And so they invited me to stop by their office. They're only about 10 miles from me, so it's simple to do. So I said, sure, I'd love to meet you. Went into their office, And this is literally the first minute I had met the management team of HubSpot. I opened up my notebook computer, and on the back of my computer, I had a couple of stickers. One of the stickers I had was a Grateful Dead logo. And the CEO of HubSpot, Brian Halligan, says, hang on, hang on, hang on. We can't start this meeting until you tell me about that sticker on the back of your computer. And I said, I love the Grateful Dead. I've seen them like 40 or 50 times. They're my favorite band. And Brian says, I love the Grateful Dead too. They're my favorite band too. I've seen them over 100 times. And so we had something instantly, an instant connection, something that tied us together. We shared the same fandom. We were part of the same tribe. And so we started talking about the Grateful Dead before we talked about business. And then I actually had a ticket to an upcoming show. I said, hey, you want to go with me? He said, sure. And not only did we become good friends, but within about a week, he invited me to join the HubSpot advisory board as the very first advisor to the company. I still am a member of the HubSpot advisory board. And that was 2007. So how many years is that? 14 years later. Together, I think we've seen, I don't know, 40 or 50 live shows or maybe more together. And I've been working with the company ever since. And I believe if I hadn't had that sticker on my computer, that none of that would have happened. It personalized us. And interestingly, it turns out that that you don't have to be a fan of the same thing for this kind of concept to work. He didn't have to be a fellow Grateful Dead fan. He could just recognize that I'm passionate enough about the things that I love to put a sticker on my computer. And that's true for all of us. So, B2B salespeople, I'm not sure about in your country, but in this country, there's a lot of focus on playing golf. Or, it's like, oh, I got to invite them to play golf. We can share a round of golf and talk about business. Personally, I hate fucking golf. If somebody invited me to play golf, I'd laugh at them and say, you got to be freaking kidding. But if somebody is passionate about something else, I would be attracted to it, to something different, and so few people, I believe, are willing to share what they're passionate about. And you can just tell on the LinkedIn profile of the average B2B salesperson. There's nothing in there about what they're passionate about. It's written as if it's a resume for their next sales job, not written as if it's, here's how I help my clients, here's what I love about my life, things like that never enter into somebody's LinkedIn profile. So I know I riffed a long time on a simple question, but it really is important for B2B salespeople to understand that my daughter and I spent 5 years studying fandom, how and why people become fans of a company, a product, a service, an idea. The thing that was most surprising to us was this importance of passion. And yet the average B2B salespeople does not exhibit any passion for the things that they love in their work.
You see so many lines, don't you, on LinkedIn as I am passionate about, insert what company does.
Correct.
And you think, really? You're passionate about making widgets? Come on.
You're passionate about
even golf's more interesting than that.
You're passionate about software that moves data from one point to another point. You got to be kidding. And anyone who says that, I don't trust you.
I'm not sure I'd want to meet them.
I don't trust you. I don't trust someone who says they're passionate about middleware. I really don't. Somebody on the technology side, yes. Or the entrepreneurial founder, yes. I absolutely understand that you're passionate about middleware, but not the salesperson. No freaking way.
Yeah. Or I've always loved computers. That's why I've gone to work for a technology company. Okay, slightly different, but no, That's so cool. But no, I mean, that's why I wanted to speak to you. Was not about golf. I hate golf as well. Spoils a good walk, I think, is the is the expression,
Yeah.
isn't
Oh,
it?
hey, well, I want to go sell this guy. So what am I going to do? I'll invite him to play golf. We'll have 5 hours on a golf course to talk, and I'll try to sell him something. Like, no.
Somebody did give me the tip of, actually, if you really do have to go and do it, just offer to drive the buggy.
There you go.
You don't have to play.
And you can
You're not going to
drink.
get frustrated about putting the ball into the trees, and you sit and play on a little cart all day.
And you can drink. You could be
And you serve the drinks. You
the
serve the
keeper
drinks.
of the
You
drinks.
control them.
There you go.
Yeah, until you get taken off the cart at about 16th. But no, look, I really want to. So it's Fanocracy that I read recently, and I absolutely loved it. And like I said to you, I look at it with kind of two filters on. I got my marketing head on, so marketing my own business, but also I'm always looking for, what can B2B salespeople take, and are there any little things? And so look, you're already giving us the tips that I knew you'd be able to. So yeah, I mean, that book is no way just for marketers. What else could a modern salesperson take from that?
One of the main things that we researched, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I wrote the book with my daughter, Reiko. Reiko is someone who's also very passionate about the things that she loves, very different than me. She loves Korean pop music, K-pop. She loves Harry Potter. She loves Harry Potter so much that she actually wrote an alternative ending to the Harry Potter series. It's a full-length novel where Draco Malfoy is a spy for the Order of the Phoenix. And she put that onto a fan fiction site and gives it away for free. Thousands and thousands of people have downloaded it. So she's really passionate too, but about different things. Reiko is actually a doctor in emergency department at Boston Medical Center. So she and I are extremely different. We're obviously different generations, and she's my daughter. She's a woman. She's a millennial woman. She's mixed race. My wife is Japanese. And she loves different things than I do. So we decided to write this book together to make sure that the ideas that we're writing about with fandom are as broad as possible. And one of the things that we focused on is the neuroscience behind fandom. Reiko's undergraduate degree at Columbia University was in neuroscience. So we focused on understanding the science behind what's happening in our brains when we become a fan of something. And it turns out that all humans, you and me and everybody listening into this podcast, everybody is hardwired to want to be part of a tribe of like-minded people. Because when we're a part of a tribe of like-minded people, we feel safe and comfortable and secure because we're with people who are like us. And that actually goes back tens of thousands of years to early humans, because when you were with your tribe, you were safe, you were comfortable. And if you ran across some other humans or an animal or something that was dangerous, and you were with a bunch of other people who you could trust, you were much more likely to survive that encounter. And if you were alone, or you approached people you didn't know, that was a dangerous situation. Well, our brains still work that way, which is why when you walk into a party and you know people there, you feel great, you feel happy. But you walk into a crowded train car and you feel slightly nervous just because you don't know those people, and you can't help it. That's your brain working. So what that means is that the more that we as business people, as salespeople, as marketers can create a tribe of people, the better. And one way, I mean, of course, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it makes it a little more difficult. But one way is to bring people together. Because one neuroscientist that we learned about, his name is Edward T. Hall, identified that the closer you get to other people, the more powerful the human connection. And he actually identified further than 12 feet, he called public space. And further than 12 feet, our brains track people who are that far away, but we don't actually pay that much attention to them. However, inside of 12 feet, our brains begin to pay very close attention to those people because they're kind of in our zone. And then inside of, and so that's inside of 12 feet. And inside of 4 feet, called personal space, is where things get really interesting, because that's where the most powerful connections happen. So if you're at a cocktail party, or you're with your friends, you're likely to be about 4 feet away. That's if you're sharing a pint of beer, and you've got your beer and someone talking to someone, it's about 4 feet away. And so, yes, David, we're in a pandemic. We're not supposed to get that close to people. So here's what's really interesting about another form of neuroscience, which is called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the part of our brains that fire when we see somebody doing something as if we're doing it ourselves. And those mirror neurons explain a phenomenon that all salespeople can use to generate more sales and to build fans. And that is the proper use of video. So I'm going to demonstrate mirror neurons to you first by holding up a lemon and a slice of lemon. If I take a bite of the lemon, it's super powerful, right? So, wow, my brain is firing, and my eyes actually close or watering a little bit. My mouth, I can feel it on my lips and my tongue. And really, gosh, it's powerful to bite into a lemon. My brain is firing, but Fred, your brain is firing too, right?
And my saliva glands.
You got it. So
absolutely, they are. I'm want to do that, but I
everybody,
realize I'm on a mic right next to my mouth.
and anyone who's only listening and didn't see me doing that, I bet your brains are firing too. That's through mirror neurons. And so I mentioned earlier that the closer you get to someone, the more powerful the human connections. About 4 feet away is where the most powerful things happen. That's cocktail party distance, sitting across from somebody at a table at a restaurant. If you shoot video like we're shooting right now, and both of us are actually doing this, Fred, and your video is cropped as if you're about 4 feet away from the other person. Now, that's not how far the camera is. Camera could be farther or closer, but the video is actually cropped as if you're 4 feet away. That's super, super powerful, because our brains, through the power of mirror neurons, are processing this as if we're in the same room, because our brains are firing and telling us we're in the same room. I feel as though I'm in the same room with you, Fred, and people who are watching this feel as if they're in the same room as us. So a few things that are important: the camera should be about eye level. And both of our cameras right now are about eye level. You should look directly at the camera, not looking down at the other person, but at the camera. And be natural, as if you're talking to somebody in a crowded room. If you do that and you use that kind of video on your websites, in your communications to potential customers, and doing things like Zoom calls, that will be a very powerful way to build those kinds of human connections for B2B salespeople.
Right. I just need to rewind you slightly there to underline a couple of words.
Sure.
Yeah. And the order you said it in. You said use it on your websites, use it in your communications, and use it in your Zoom calls.
Yeah.
You did not only speak about Zoom.
Correct.
And for me, that's a real challenge at the moment, is getting salespeople. They might not be able to control the website stuff, but they can definitely use it in other communication. And a missing trick if they don't.
Let's talk about the website first. Many B2B companies will have places where they want people to participate in a call to action that becomes a sales lead. So, for example, they might offer some kind of research report, and you have to fill out a form and give your email address to download that research report. Or they'll have a place that you can join a webinar. You can request information. You can request a free trial. I mean, all sorts of different calls to action that various B2B companies use on their website. All of them are designed to develop sales leads, which then are followed up by the salespeople. And so there's a really cool technique for how you can use video, like I just described, where you're looking directly at the camera, you talk directly to the person, use mirror neurons, make it natural, and it's designed to get more people to fill out those forms, more people to say, raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested. And so here's what the technique is. Anytime you have a form that you want someone to fill out, you can right next to the form have a video that people can click on that tells them what will happen when they fill out the form. Because the plain and simple truth is that many people are wary of filling out the forms because they're scared of having salespeople attack them. And so what you can do is you can have that video on your website next to the form that says, and if you want an example of this, go to my website.
Mm-hmm.
It's davidmeermanscott.com, and maybe you can put this in the show notes, Fred.
Definitely.
davidmeermanscott.com, and then you'll see a button on nearly all of the website pages on my site that says book me to speak. If you press that button, you'll see the form that I ask people to fill out if they're interested in contacting me about having me potentially speak at their conference. And next to the form is a video, so you can see exactly how this is done. In my video, because I'm interested in having people inquire to potentially have me speak at their conferences, both virtual and in person, my video says, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't remember the exact words I use, but something like, hey, thanks for your interest in having me potentially speak at your event. When you fill out this form, I will receive it personally. I'll take a look at what you're asking, and then we'll schedule a meeting. And at the meeting, we'll end up talking about what it is that you're trying to do, how I might be able to help, and I'll share with you the type of presentation I'll put together. Now, here's the thing that's super interesting about this. This increases the percentage of people who will fill out the form by 20 to 50%. 20 to 50% simply by having a video next to your sign-up forms. That's a remarkable result. So anyone who's listening in, even if you're not a salesperson, you can certainly have a conversation with your marketing team and say, hey, this guy wrote this book on fandom, and it turns out that through the power of mirror neurons, it is more likely that we're going to get more signups to our forum if we use video in this way, 20 to 50%. Here's an example. They can use my site as an example. The tool I use is called Vidyard, Vidyard. And you'll see the tool has a little animation of me waving to get people to push the button on the video. So that's how the video aspect works for marketing, for the website. And yes, many people who are listening in who are salespeople may not control the website, but you certainly can connect with people who do.
They control their LinkedIn page.
They do
Which is a kind of website. So again, exactly the same principles apply. And funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to Tyler Lessard.
Did you? Yeah.
of Vidyard.
Nice. Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Who again gave us this stuff is not him making up. It's not you making up. People are saying this stuff is working.
It is working.
And of course, when you talk about communication, use it within LinkedIn messaging, within emails, because when we see people and go, oh, it's kind of a normal person.
Yeah.
It's got two eyes, a nose, ears. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Speaks. Oh, okay.
Right.
Feel as though I know them already. That's the trick, isn't it? That's what we're trying to achieve with that.
Yeah, and what that really comes down to, and I'm sure that you've had these discussions on your show before, is being human. We B2B sales, you're not selling to a business. B2B is a misnomer. Business to business is a misnomer, because a lot of people believe I'm selling to a business, but you're not. You're always selling to people. You're always selling to humans. So the more that you can share that's human, the more that you can share of yourself that's personal, the more that you can show people that, you're just like them. You're a person who's trying to do a good job and help people out, the better.
Yeah. A phrase I use a lot because I talk about partnering skills and collaboration in my book is organizations don't partner, people do,
Yeah, it's
which
exactly
is
right.
just
Yeah,
another version of the same
no
thing.
question about it.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting in your book, you decided to go down writing different chapters each. So
Mm.
Reiko was writing one, you were writing another. Um, and I just thought, am I going to ask him this question? I thought, I have to ask him this question, which is about one of Reiko's chapters.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
No, but pretty much you just said the same thing, which was about, she talks about rehumanizing and talks about her experience as a doctor where, okay, you can look at somebody and say, well, that's what's wrong when you take these pills. And the person might push back and not really want to. But she'd read something, I think it's called narrative
Yeah,
medicine,
narrative medicine.
and I read that with my sales head on and went, that's selling. Well, that's good
Yeah,
selling,
no,
sorry.
it was super interesting. First, something that was very interesting was we originally wrote the book in one voice. So we took both of our ideas and then rammed them together to create one voice. And the book wasn't working because we're very different people with different writing styles, different personalities, different perspectives, and that wasn't coming through. So it turns out we ended up completely rewriting the book. Took a long time, but it was worth it, so that she wrote her chapters, I wrote my chapters. And so and we say who wrote it, by Reiko, by David, and our personalities come through. So you're right. She wrote a chapter where she talks about humanizing, and she's a very, very good writer. She's a better writer than I am, and she really is a great writer, and much more lyrical than I am. Has better vocabulary than I do. So she is an expert in something called narrative medicine. Narrative medicine is when a doctor understands a patient's full story, not just their symptoms. And that's something that's pretty rare in at least American medicine, where doctors just, figure out what your data is, your vital signs are, and then what's the problem, and then they decide what's wrong with you and give you some pills or figure out what they're going to do to try to fix the problem. Whereas the narrative medicine approach is understanding the patient's story, what got them to this point, what are the important things in their life. And she tells a story in the book that I think is so interesting, where she was talking to a patient who's an older man, and she started to ask him questions, about his life, and turns out he was an artist, and he had lost his wife, and so he was alone, and he said that, as long as I can do my art, I want to continue to live. But if I can no longer do my art, then I do not want to be kept alive any longer. And he had a serious disease. So this was an important discussion. Yet there were no, and she wasn't even a doctor yet. She was in medical school at the time. And no other doctor had gotten to that story of his life and what health means to him, because for most doctors, it's all about just prolonging life as long as possible. And so by understanding the patient's story, she was able to focus on a much better outcome for the patient. He'd rather be home for 3 months doing art than stay alive for 6 months in the hospital not being able to do art. So the same thing is true about sales. The more that you can focus on understanding the stories of the customers you're trying to reach, and what it is they're trying to do with your potential product or service, the more that you're able to be a better salesperson and not just focus on selling your product or service, which is like what the doctors are doing, just dispensing pills.
Mm. Oh, it's very powerful. There's an interesting denouement to it. I'm not going to tell you what it is because people can go and read about it. Any other things that you think? I appreciate time. We're on quite a tight schedule here, but that we really need to get across to salespeople that come specifically from Fanocracy, and we can point them towards that so they can get more detail from it.
Another thing that I really love as a chapter and as an idea and as a concept is the idea of giving gifts, giving more than you have to. You know, um, I'm I'm a big believer in the concept that the more you give to the universe, the more the universe gives back. And I've always kind of had that approach to my life. I've had that approach to the way that I've been writing and speaking about how to do marketing and sales. And Fanocracy, there's a chapter in the book on this particular idea. Yet it's a little it's a little understood concept in business, especially in sales, because salespeople are all about taking, taking, taking. You know, the traditional approach to sales is how can you get more money out of somebody? How can you, get them to sign the contract? And I think that an approach that isn't really used very often that works so well is don't even think about the contract. Don't even think about the sale. Instead, give as much as you possibly can without any expectation of anything in return. It's a little bit of an airy fairy kind of idea, but I think that if you go through life and go through business with the expectation that the more you give, the more you get, that's a really good approach and will be a better way to live your life, but also a better way to do business. And, I recognize that a lot of sales departments and companies are not organized around this principle because they're more organized around quarterly profits or monthly numbers. And it's hard to work within an environment that's focused on quarterly numbers or monthly numbers and practice this kind of selling where you're simply giving, 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 providing value to people, providing free content, providing free advice, rather than putting a squeeze page on your white paper where you're asking people for their email address. You give out the white paper completely free with no registration required at all. Like I've been a guest on over 200 podcasts like this in the last year, Fred. And people say to me, David, you're crazy. Why are you a guest on over 200 podcasts? What is that doing for you? And I said, well, I'd rather give to the universe. Maybe a few people might buy my book. That's cool. Maybe a few people who read the book might decide that they think my ideas are great, and implement them and be more successful. That makes me feel good. And maybe over time, maybe one or two of them might decide that they want to have me speak at their conference or something else. And that's how I've always done business. I've never made a cold call in my life. And for my own business, I did in my prior life when I was working for companies, but not in my own business. And I've always had more business than I can possibly handle. So I just wonder if people think about different ways to do things, radically different ways to do things.
That is a superb place for us to nearly end, because I'm actually going to ask one more question, because I'm with you on this one. Business is a force for good. It is something that I believe in. And so I subscribe to a thing called B1G1, which is buy one, give one, which itself is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals of UN.
Cool.
So that when I'm doing work, I kind of align the training, things we do, so I can make donation. So the question to you is, let's pretend you and I can actually get on a plane and we can physically go somewhere to do some good. Are we going to go to Africa or Latin America or Asia to actually get our hands dirty doing something?
Hmm.
And why are you picking the one you're picking?
That's that's a super easy question because I'm actually a partner in a 10,000 acre nature preserves in the country of Panama. And we own 10,000 acres of a rainforest. And I became involved, essentially donating the money to buy the rainforest, my piece of the rainforest, because I fly a lot. Well, I haven't flown in the last year, but I normally fly a lot. And I've got 2 houses and 4 cars, and I have a big carbon footprint. So my piece of this incredibly amazing rainforest way more than offsets my carbon footprint for the rest of my life, as well as my wife's and my daughter's and my son-in-law's and any future children they have. All of our carbon footprints are already taken care of because of this land that we've put into preserve. On our site, we actually have an eco lodge and a super great place to stay. And so that's, Fred, where I want to meet you.
Oh, I will definitely meet you there. I mean, I was setting it up just to decide where I'm going to make my donation. So I've got some ready set up for that, but I'll adjust it to make it Latin America. And no, I can't remember where it is, but I can plant some trees in the rainforest using the B1G1 platform.
Panama.
So
This particular place in Panama is super interesting because it's the narrowest point between North America and South America, and the narrowest point between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So it's super important for animals, birds, insects, all kinds of other creatures, because as well as plants, because it's so narrow right there. And it's a very in danger of being harmed because cattle ranching has started to take over those areas. And cattle ranching is horrible for the environment. So of the 10,000 acres we purchased, some of it was cattle ranching that we're letting go back to natural state, and others were primary rainforest that we're preserving forever.
brilliant. Well, I like to, on behalf of my guests, to say thank you to them to make a donation. So I'll make a donation towards rainforest and some sustainability.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. We can talk offline about how to do that. Maybe you can put in the show notes.
Yeah, no, I will. I'll get that from you too.
Great.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate your time. And we'll get all those notes in so that people can go and have a look at the stuff that you're talking about.
Sounds good, Fred. I really appreciate it. Have an awesome time, and I'm glad to hear that you agree with many of these strategies for selling that I do. And it sounds like we're on the same wavelength.
We are.